All right, this is from chapter 4 of Last One to Die. It's the second story called Todd. I have always loved living in LA. The good, the bad, and the smog. I'll probably always live here. Whether it's running out of gas in the middle of Compton or asking a black guy for a jump start on the day of the Rodney King verdicts, LA has always been an interesting adventure for me. Throughout high school, I would venture further and further into LA for no other reason other than to see what's out there. My father used to work in City Hall, and back when I was a kid, he took me downtown to the jewelry district. We found an alley to park in, and as we're leaving the car, I hear a real loud ruckus down another alley. As we walk by, I see an old black guy screaming by the dumpster and throwing trash, screaming, "And don't come around here again, motherfucker." I looked up and down the alley. There was no one there. I look up at my dad and he says, "Walk in front of me and keep moving." I was in shock. I saw a man having a very intense fight with no one, and my dad was unfazed. As the weeks and months went by, the more fascinated I became with the incident. Anyone living in LA now is probably unmoved by the incident. With the homeless situation now, it's probably happened in your backyard this morning. But in the early to mid-70s, this was wild stuff. Fast forward 20 years to 1995. I was working the late shift at Kinko's in their computer department. This guy Todd is bored, and he calls me at work and says, "I want to go somewhere tonight. If you're up for it, I'll pick you up from work. Can you sneak out before midnight?" I tell him I'll get somebody to punch out for me. Be here at 10 or 10:30. Todd picks me up, and as he backs up, he says, "So, where do we go?" I thought he had a plan, so I said, "Let's go to Hollywood and go to a coffee shop or one of the weird little shops on Melrose." Todd looks a little spooked and says, "It's late. And isn't there too many weirdos out there?" Too funny. I tell him I'll hold his hand and protect him. Little did I know he'd hold me to that. We get to Hollywood Boulevard, and I said, "Let's go to the International Bookstand." It's a great newsstand off of Hollywood and Argyle. Todd circles the block once or twice and finds a place to park. We start walking west towards Argyle when a guy who looks like Charles Manson, if Manson smoked crack and took steroids, steps in front of me and says, "Listen, brother, we need to talk about Jesus." I, politely, as I can muster at that hour, tell him no thanks and maybe another time. Manson instantly grabs me by the arm and says, "No, brother, we'll talk about Jesus now." My instant reaction to being grabbed was to throw my arm out, which knocked his arm off me and knocked him back a foot. Manson gives me this glazed look and puts 2 fingers in his mouth and whistles really loud. Instantly, 8 or 9 guys who look identical to Manson surround me. All these guys are holding literature geared towards junkies finding Christ, and now they're circling me. When Manson says this fucker doesn't like Jesus, they keep closing in, and then coming from a block or 2 away, I hear, "Leave my friend alone." My friend Todd was running down the block, but as he was running, became concerned with my well-being and decided to yell at my assailants. I knew that if need be, I could whoop a couple of these guys. A few years earlier, I fought super middleweight around LA on the amateur circuit. But I was now surrounded by 10 ex-junkies, Jesus-loving Manson freaks. Then I hatched a plan. I started pacing. And I remembered a story this Persian girl I once dated told me. She said one time back in Iran, she took a cab and mistakenly sat up front. The cab driver took it as a come-on, so he started driving her out of the city, and when she asked where he was taking her, he said to rape her. She didn't know what to do, so she started shaking. He asked if she was scared. She said no, she was excited. This turned him off, and he stopped the cab and threw her out. So, as I paced, I decided to start ranting like I was into this. I started throwing random jabs like I was warming up for a fight. Then I said, "Come on, let's do this." The crowd came in even closer. Then I said, "Let's fight. Who's going to go first?" Just like that, the crowd of 10 started hemming and hawing and saying stuff like, "Look at the time. I'm supposed to be back at church at 11:30. Everybody left. I spent about 30 minutes looking for Todd. I found him inside the newsstand reading. I looked at him, wanting to stomp him, and I growled, "What happened to you back there?" He casually looks up and said, "I didn't want to get in the way. You seem to have everything under control." Under control? There were 10 of them. "Yeah, you're a good fighter. Let's go eat." Todd and I never returned to Hollywood together again. Thanks for listening.